It's below zero, and we just keep showing up.
We do. Same, below zero, but nothing but heroes. It is March. It's not March. It's February 8th. I wish it was March. It's February 18th, the year 2025. Welcome aboard, everybody. Listen to the Crushing Iron podcast, and this is episode 833.
That's 833.
We're talking college basketball before we go live, and I'm thinking of warm weather. I got March in the mind, but yeah, it's not. It's still February. Yeah, it's a hell of a week. It's negative. Yeah, it feels like here it's negative with you. We got snow coming down right now. Yeah, it's a cold front for a lot of people, but you know what you say. You just got to keep showing up. That'll be the topic of today, and a variety of routes, not just what we do with training, but showing up mentally and emotionally, and that obviously leads to to physically showing up. Church, I'm tuning in today. Welcome. We appreciate your time. We know you have quite a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general. Time is revitalized. Appreciate you tuning in today. We cover it all. We do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We do race recaps and also a lot of race previews. But for the most part, Mike and I as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open discussion about what we're going through in life, not just as human beings, but also as coaches and athletes ourselves. We also like to talk frequently about what our own athletes are going through. Mike and I work with a wide range of athletes all across the globe, from beginner level athletes in the very first 5K or sprint triathlon, all the way up through elite level amateurs trying to get back to our championships, and everyone in between from all over the globe. We use the feedback loop we have with them and training peaks, emails, text messages, and the like to drive the discussion today. We also like to utilize our Facebook group, and you can search that, Crushing Iron Group. Answer one simple question. We'll let you right in. Awesome people, fantastic community, and a very solid resource in a sport that is oftentimes way overcomplicated and way too confusing. It is a safe, actionable space to get great information from seasoned veterans and people who've been on the block for a very long time. Hopefully, allow you to avoid some of the same pitfalls and obstacles we've all have had along our way. We like to pop in there at least every 3 to 6 weeks, do a little bit of a Q&A, take the pulse of the community, answer as many questions as we can on that day. But that is it. We have no sponsors and we have no ads, but we do have an agenda, and that's to do our best to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Yep. One thing about this cold and keeping you out of it's tough to get out in it. Honestly, it's so windy here too. I can't even really cook a steak, let alone, I don't know. But it's given me a lot of time not a lot of time, but it's given me enough time to work on designing our salt room up here, Himalayan salt room up here at the lodge, which is nice.
You're getting a Himalayan salt room?
Yeah, that's what I'm going for next. I think we're going to do it.
I like it, dude.
Yeah. A lot of benefits.
Dude, that's the rumor. I love it, man. You got a freaking wellness spa up there, and I freaking love that. Yeah, it's you could probably go out and use some of that salt and salt your driveway these days. But yeah, it's a brutal time for not everyone, because if you live in California and Florida, you're like, first off, if you're one of those people who has great weather right now, don't taunt. Okay? Don't taunt, don't troll, because come July, guess what? We'll remember. I had an athlete yesterday. He's in Bradenton, like just outside of Sarasota. He was like, dude, I just got to tell you how beautiful it is today. Weather's perfect. I was outside on my bike. It just total blue. It just was unbelievable. And I said, he's like, I don't miss living up north at all. I said, well, you know what? I hope tomorrow you step in a Lego. Yeah. Because that kind of shit comes back. We'll be bringing that stuff in the house, and we're all trying to just make our way and bide our time. But no, it was interesting. I looking at obviously the weather is tough not tough all year round, but is always giving us, it's the thing we look for, I think, and look to the most when we try to make or adjust our training decisions to stay inside or to go outside. Is it going to be too hot? Is it going to be too cold? Is it going to be too windy? Is it light? Is it dark? What's the situation? Because it is, I think, in my opinion, it is the element, right, or the piece of our uncontrollables that does alter our ability to perform more than anything, right? You go outside and I think the range for optimal performance is like high 40s to low, or excuse me, it's high 40s to like mid to high 50s is that optimal temperature for performance. Right. And that's just not for racing. It's also for training. Right. You go out and you run, and, 42, 43, it's sunny and no wind, it's perfect, right? You can keep your core temp down, the dew point's gone, there's no humidity, it feels amazing, and that's where you get your best runners. But anything above that and below that, the elements begin to degrade your ability to perform at your highest fitness level, right? So like that sweet spot in temperature, right, with no wind. And I mean, dude, I mean, speaking of like ideal temps, the half marathon world record was broken this weekend. The guy went under 57 minutes, which is mind blowing. Okay, I'm gonna get right back on the topic here in a minute, but I was reading like the recap of the race, and they were like, yeah, let me say that one more time for those of you that may have skipped over that part. A 57-minute half marathon. And they said in like the pre-race meeting, they started they decided to go out at a meager 4:15 pace.
Yeah, I gotta warm up.
Yeah, you're right. You gotta get a good lather. And it's funny, like so for me, one of the best gauges to like really truly gauge how fast someone else is running compared to like what you're able to do is I always tell myself, all right, well, if that's it, let's say that's their average pace. At what point in that race could I start running with them and finish with them? And then that also goes for like the marathons, right? Where they're doing like 2 hours, 2:01. I think the full marathon record will probably go down this year, next year. I know that this guy who just broke the half marathon record went under 57, and it was the largest drop ever, like from a world record standpoint. I think it was like 40 seconds. He's doing a marathon in April. So you could, if the weather's conditions are perfect, just like they were this last weekend, it could go down. Like it could go like a legit sub 2 hours, not like an aided one, like the Nike project. But anyway, I was thinking like, when could I start running with this guy and finish with him? And I'm pretty sure the answer is the last 5 meters, maybe. And I think even then I'm at like the I'm at the risk of like pulling a hammy. I mean, it's just mind-blowing to see some of these times in running, even for like a marathon. You know, he's ran 13 miles, and I can probably pick up the last 5 meters in an all-out sprint and maybe keep up with him. Same thing with the marathon, right? Like this guy's going to run 26.2 miles. I can probably start running with him the last 0.1, maybe, and finish with him. And my heart rate will probably be like 30. It's just mind-blowing to see some of these times. Anyway.
Yeah, but he couldn't build a training plan at Training Peaks with you.
Right. I mean,
you know what I mean? You could do that. He'd pull a finger muscle.
It's just, I know, dude. It's just wild. But anyways, but they have perfect conditions. So going back to conditions that are effect on us. So anything above that, or anything warmer than that, and your body has to use energy to cool itself off. Obviously, wind is the biggest factor as well. Like if you have a headwind, anything colder than that, your body needs to expend energy to warm itself up. So anytime energy goes away from optimal performance, whether it's to heat yourself, cool yourself, digest food, it takes away from your ability to perform. And so like so again, like this is a deep summer problem, and then right now we're like the deep winter problem. To me, it's like, and I put this in the email yesterday. It was like, you know, right now when you're going through periods, and honestly, I think it comes at I know a lot of us tend to find February, and you're the same way too, I'm sure. Like you read athletes are like, it's February, I'm over the treadmill, I'm over the indoor trainer. You know, like you can't go outside, or even if you're like outside run, it's -20. There's no point. Don't even do it. You know, it's like when the dew point's 79, it's like just don't run or take it all easy. Go inside the treadmill. It's going to be counterproductive. The wind's high, that makes it the most brutal. I actually think there's an opportunity there to change things up in a manner to where you're still getting activity in, but you're removing the same old monotony of the swim, bike, and run, which I think doing it, you know, you go to the pool in the morning, it's dark, it's cold. You get on the bike in the trainer in the basement of the garage, it's dark, it's cold. You head outside for your run in the morning, it's dark, it's cold. And you're like, or you hop on the treadmill on a fast pace to go nowhere. And it just gets very monotonous. I mean, in endurance, because again, like endurance training can get monotonous anyway, right? We do a lot of the same stuff over and over again. You know, you're doing a lot of zone 2 stuff. Sometimes it can get boring. And so when you add all those in the mix, like it tends to kind of eat away at people. And I think when we are presented with these, you know, conditions that are less than optimal, whether it's optimal conditions outside or whether those optimal conditions are leading to limited availability at the gym, like you can't go to the gym because the gym is closed or school's out or school, the kids are home, you can't make adjustments, right? So what I do think is it opens up opportunity to be a little bit more flexible with the minutes that you're trying to earn each week. And what I mean by minutes you're earning is we talk a lot about, stress is stress, right? You got life stress, you got personal stress, you got professional stress, you got probably reading social media stress, like you got all kinds of stress. And all that accumulates in our bucket. But same thing with swimming and cycling and running. Like there's swim stress, there's riding stress, and there's run stress, right? And I think everyone could agree without any education or even research that running stress is the easiest to accumulate, right? It pounds your body. It takes the most energy to produce force to propel yourself forward, right? Because you're just using your legs, yes, a little bit of your arms. The stress you get when running is always the highest, right? So like, when you start working with an athlete and they might question, all right, well, I can't do my hour and a half bike today. Can I go do an hour and a half run? Okay, no, you can't. That's a totally different stress level, right? Compared to, it's not a minutes to minutes thing. But what happens is when you have these opportunities, I think, where you have these restrictions, whether it's you can't go swim or you're stuck on the bike or you want to go out and do something, is look at just trying to accumulate minutes within the week. And it's a lot of time, and this shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone listening, or I know it doesn't come as a surprise to you as a coach, but triathletes are oftentimes way over specific, right? The swim stress has got to stay in the swim stress bucket. The bike's fitness has got to stay in the bike fitness bucket. It's not that. It's way more simple than that, right? It's you get in work, you do aerobic work, and you feel better, and you get fitter, and you get faster. Yes, there's always specificity that comes in with obviously mechanics and the specifics of training with swimming and cycling with running. But even when you're coaching athletes across the board that do different kind of endeavors, right? Like cross country skiing or another long distance event, like the training is the periodization and the intensity model is very, very similar. It's just specifics of the actual event. So this is a great opportunity, I think, to change things up, whether it's you can't go outside and run, add in a cycling workout, right? And there's a ratio you can use to kind of formulate like how I can do that. Or if you can't get on your bike and hop on the treadmill, do that. Or if you got a ton of snow, I know we joke about this, but if you've ever shoveled snow, it's a freaking workout. Start your Garmin, get outside, put your heart rate monitor on, and get some minutes in, right? If you can't run outside, dress up. If it's warm enough, get outside, get some like fast walking or hiking in the high wind. Like there's a lot of things we can do to, again, because it comes down to the simplest form. It's like comes down to movement and raising your heart rate. And to me, like, honestly, if we could get 90% of the U.S. to just move more and raise our heart rate daily, we'd all be in better shape. So instead of being so specific and looking for things that you can't do, find things that you can do, whether it's, creating a gym workout at home or doing something different this week. There's always an opportunity to get your minutes in. And you might find that when you step away from the stringent kind of like concrete, rigidity that a lot of people live in with their training, that this period might actually, being flexible, this period might actually save you from being burnt out over the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, I can buy into that. You mentioned something earlier about endurance monotony. And yeah, but it's such a catch-22 with me because obviously that is, when you think about doing long course racing, that's almost like a skill to develop, that ability to be monotonous and comfortable in that place. And I actually had to have a little, Stuart Smalley talk with myself in the mirror today. I mean, because it has been difficult up here. Last winter was pretty mild, and I really enjoyed it. It was my first winter back, and this one is just like grinding me down to the nub, man. It's really getting on me. And like you said, kind of that treadmill routine, and then it's just sort of like, I think just not being outside and everything can kind of drag you down a little bit too. It's just you don't feel as pliable or as flexible or as fluid or all that kind of stuff. So it just sort of adds up this box of tension or something like that. And so, but really, man, it's we said it. You just got to keep showing up or keep getting back in the ring, and that's just part of it, right? And I think it's so easy to feel sorry for yourself, and I do it. It's like it's just a tough time, But that's exactly, in this sport, you know, we decide we want to do it, and we decide we want to do crazy stuff like Ironman, and but then, you know, when the rubber hits the road, sometimes we're just sort of like, oh, I don't know if I want to do, you know. But that's what it's important for me to. I always reflect in writing and decide, like, is this something you want to do? I mean, are you wanting to do this? Because if you are, then this is part of it. You know, the grind and the tough situations, and this is what, you know, sort of shows up on race day. We talked about practicing harder than you race, and I'm fascinated by the ability to kind of flip a switch that we have. You know, I think it's so easy to kind of just sit around and pull the covers up and sort of turn the TV on or whatever, and you know, it's just like, you know, getting an extra 10 minutes in bed and sleeping, and it's a muscle. And sometimes I get pissed at myself because I don't work that muscle like I know I should, you know, even though, you know, we always talk about, it's like, we don't want to do something. We don't want to get on the bike. We don't want to get on the treadmill. We don't want to go snow hiking or whatever. But whenever you do, it always kind of makes you feel better, right? And it's always something that sort of kicks you out of that malaise and gets your, you know, blood flowing, and it just changes you. But I'm just so fascinated by that whole concept of transitions in life, when, you know, and how much longer you can make your transition sometimes in the winter, because it's like you just don't feel like doing it, and you get kind of comfortable and whatever. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, it's like, you know, you always have that argument of, well, sometimes you need that rest. It's kind of that hibernation, that nature theory. It's like, maybe it's okay. It's not, you know, this isn't the time where you feel like going out and blasting a, you know, 4-hour trainer ride right now, you know, and unless you're doing Texas. But it's like, man, it's one of those things where sometimes you just have to have balance, and you, like you're saying, you kind of have to have changes or differences or something, or it is just going to be a tougher and tougher road to keep going down.
You know, I think it's been, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months. We talked a lot about Cam Wurf and one of his interviews that he did, I think, with Rich Roll. And it was funny, like, I think he's like the perfect example of a guy that, like, kind of never says no to training or quote unquote exercising, irregardless of what it is he's actually specifically training for. Like, the guy is just game for everything. And he doesn't, and he is significantly better at all things, you know, cycling, swimming, and running, than anyone probably listening to this podcast, and not probably, but for sure, world-class athlete. And he doesn't even go out and like, you know what, I'm going to have an Ironman this year. I can't do anything that's going to interfere with my swimming and cycling and running. It's got to be that, or it's not going to transfer. The guy does whatever he can to move, whatever he can to exercise. And I think, because that's training, right? As long as you're pushing yourself, and you have a little bit of you know, specifics into what you're trying to accomplish here, and that's great. But the truth of the matter is that irregardless of the discipline, like swimming, cycling, you know, running for him, rowing, or strength training, whatever it is, like, you don't have to be overly specific more than like 2 to 3 times a week. Right. And that's when you get your intensity in. Like, the rest of it can just be, I'm going to accumulate as much volume as I can. You know, it's kind of like it's a more, I think, probably advanced version of like getting your steps in each day. You know, it's just about getting yourself up and moving. It's about triggering your mind to think, okay, I'm sitting down right now, you know, your Apple Watch trolls you, like, right, you're like brushing your teeth before you get into bed. It's like, hey, you're only 450 steps, you know, away from your move goal. And you're like, fuck, I got to go walk around this house while I brush my teeth, get in my flights of stairs. And it seems ridiculous, but people do it, right? Because it gets you moving and gets you active. And again, I think most people would tell you that walking is way underrated. Like, if we could get the majority of this country to just do like a 30 to 45 minute brisk walk every day or 3 or 4 times a week, they'd be in significantly better health. Like, I think people underestimate how quickly and at what level you can raise your heart rate and the benefits that it has. Number one, just getting you outside to do something, hopping on the treadmill and doing it. Like, it's helpful in so many different ways. And so instead of being overly specific, think about, again, the minutes you can accumulate for the week, the volume you can accumulate for the week. Like, it'd be saying to all the athletes that we had that went out and at run camp, right? They put in a ton of elevation, right? And a lot of it was hiking, which is a great transfer from a muscular standpoint of your posterior and what you actually use when you're doing like big gear work and cycling. You think the next time they got on the bike, their bike and it's like, ooh, wait a minute. I know you ran last week. I know you put in a ton of climbing, but that was running and we're cycling and you took a week off. So we're going to be detrained. No, it doesn't say like your legs might be a little more sore, but fuck, it's not going to say that. It's like, oh man, you worked hard. Your muscles got stronger. Your ligaments got stronger. You did a lot more aerobic work. You might feel a little out of whack when it comes to like the efficiency of your pedal stroke, just like if you hop in the pool, right? You might lose a bit of feel for the water, but your system is your system. And yes, while there are very, very small differences in how we utilize and how we train those specific systems for your sport, there is way more overlap than there is difference. And so when you can get out and you can move and you can do anything, regardless of what it is, then you're going to be getting better. Right. And I think that, and again, like when you forget that, I think that comes at a cost because the year is long. The race calendar is long, especially if you're looking at you're not doing Texas or Oceanside or Texas 7.3 or Puerto Rico 7. You're not doing an early season race. There is no need to be overly specific in all things that you do, because there will come a time and a place. Like, if you look at the general periodization model, it's general prep. So general prep, just general preparation, not specific at all. You're just getting yourself at a place where you can then train. So you got general prep, then you got your base, right? Which is, again, I would say less than specific, right? Because you're just accumulating mostly zone 1, zone 2 volume and getting, establishing a really, really strong base. And then you move into the build phase, right? Which is, a little more specific, but not overly specific. Like you're building off the base period. And then the final phase, which for some of you might be 6 months away, then you move into race specific or a specificity of what you're trying to do, right? Whether it's a 5K, whether it's a marathon, whether it's a sprint distance, whether it's a full, right? Then you take the exact demands of what you have to do on race day and you apply then the specifics of your training. And that's how you utilize that last block. Most people spend way too much time, right, in trying to be overly specific at the beginning of the year. Cadence is another great thing. And even training, even like the whatever training model you might use, right? You don't do race pace year round, right? You don't do it at all. You don't do race pace year round. You work above and you work below. Cadence. If you want to really, really work on having a better cadence, you know what you do? You work up and you work down, right? You work like big gear, like 45, 50, and you work high cadence, right? You work, 90, 95, 100, 105, 110, really, really, really training all these areas that aren't specific to whatever race cadence you're going to fall under, right? Which might be 80, 85. But the best way to be 80, 85 is to do bigger gear work, like, again, 40, 45, 50, or higher cadence work, right? Ask your body to respond differently to a different stimulus, make it more efficient on both ends, right? The low and the high. And then when it gets closer to race day, then do your long intervals, right, at your race cadence when you'll be doing your race power. Same thing. If like, oh, my goal is to hold 220 watts at, Ironman, Florida in November. Well, right now, you better not be trying to hit 220 watts on Ironman. You better be going really, really easy or going really, really high. And then the last, 6 to 8 week block before that, try to see if you're at your 220, right? Same thing with like running. You don't ever want to run at race pace all the time. So I think again, I think that's just very important to understand and realize that being too specific or overly specific to start is a recipe for, not just like a physiological, not disaster, that's too dramatic, but you're not going to establish, the different levels you want to, but it's a great way to get stale and it's a really great way to get burnt out. So especially this time of year when you're looking to just accumulate minutes and accumulate hours, head out and cross country ski if you got access to it. Like you'd be hard pressed to find a better workout than that. I mean, you've been out there and done it. I mean, we got an athlete over in Sweden. Every year she is scared she's going to come back from cross country ski season and be quote unquote out of triathlon shape. But every year, the last 3 years, she hops back into tri season and fucking rips it because she's putting out so much work doing it, and it's not specific. Just we got to unwrap our minds around how specific we have to be to see a special benefit from it.
Well, what you're saying, creating a range in your training, and I just think it's so always good to be a more versatile athlete. Someone who can, we talk about gear up, gear down, all these kind of things, and the ability to sort of be able to own different places and then settle into the place where, you need to be. And it just becomes more and more comfortable. If you're like, it's like anything, you stretch yourself out one direction and then pull it way back the other way. And it's sort of like landing in the middle is like, it just feels more and more natural, and you have more and more range when it's necessary. Because, the other thing, when you talk about stuff like high cadence or big gear, and I think about how that translates to courses, and it's sort of like just building your race specific in a sense of, okay, you're going to be climbing hills sometimes, right? When you least expect it or whatever, it creates this ability to go places, right? So you're working on that range. And to me, it's a versatile athlete that has a wide range that can do different things. Otherwise, because, if you're used to just sort of riding and then you hit the race and, how it goes, it's sort of like, people in erg mode or whatever, it just sort of happens for them. But if you get caught up in, you're coming into a hill or out of a hill or something, and your cadence is way out of whack, and you like, how does that affect you? And it just creates more of a sort of calm athlete, one that isn't overreactionary. And yeah, I think to me, like you're talking about in the off season, it's a really great time to build skills. And that's what you're talking about. It's like you're creating stronger skill set so that it applies in the race easier, and you can naturally kind of adapt to the conditions no matter what they are. And that's what I love about, snowshoe hiking and sand running and stuff like that. It just creates sort of a wider range and ability to acclimate to different situations when they come up. And then, of course, like you're saying, as you get closer and closer to the race, and that's exactly what I'll do is a lot of times I'll do crazy things that I know are hard, and they don't even like line up to anything really as far as Ironman goes. But as you get closer to the race, then you start dialing it in. I'll start running more on pavement, and I get more and more used to that kind of thing and holding tempos and things like that. But it's really nice to sort of stretch yourself and actually improve and build your skill set right now in different ways. And they talk about the best, like a guy like Michael Jordan, they said that he is a great athlete, but his skill set was just so amazing that he could do anything at any time just without thinking about it too. And that's another big thing is that, I got to be geared down, like just doing things without thinking about them. And yeah, so if you're not as always race specific, like perfect condition thinking, then you can work on these things and just build them over time, and you just become a better triathlete in the long run, I think, rather than just always kind of staying in your comfort zone.
Yeah, and it allows you to be more of a Swiss Army knife. Like you're able to adapt to different situations. You don't, and again, like to me, it's not even so much about like the physical / physiology of what you're trying to develop. It's the willingness to always find a way, right? It's you got really like two different kinds of athletes. The one where, they forgot their goggles or their swim P3 player or their Garmin watch and the swim is over. And then you have the one that's like, hey, is there a lost and found here? I'm gonna grab some goggles. I'm gonna get my swim in, right? Like they just find a way. They hop on their bike and Zwift isn't working and the whole world is crumbling and we can't ride with our virtual buddies and it's like I couldn't do it today. And then there's the ones that are like, I'm just gonna ride on a note card and get my shit together. Or it's sprinkling, it's sprinkling rain outside. I think I'm gonna have to swap things up. And then there's the ones that are like, I'm going to put on a freaking rain jacket and I'm going to go run. Right? There's always, and to me, like, and that's what you're always teaching yourself from a behavioral standpoint, like how to adapt, how to be resilient, you know. And it's like, you know, I always think, like, when I'm talking to Hayden, I'm like, if we would always talk to ourselves and other adults like we talk to our kids, people probably be a lot tougher as we get older. You know, you're like, oh, just, you know, like when Hayden, like if he forgets something on the way to hockey, he forgets it. You ain't gonna practice with it. We're not going home to get it. That was on you. But as an adult, you're like, oh, I'll just scrap it and maybe try to do it later, which you all know isn't gonna work. Or I'm gonna move it to Sunday when you've already moved like 13 workouts to Sunday. Like, as a coach, it takes you 17 minutes to scroll to the bottom of your feed because you have 17 bikes, 4 runs, and 14 swims on your Sunday because you're gonna make them up. You miss it, you move on, or you find a way to get it done, whether it's doing the whole thing or not. You know, like a great example this morning with the first people I read through. She had an hour and 50-minute workout this morning, and I read, and she's like, I slipped in my alarm. And so what I did was I skipped half the warm up. I nailed the main set and got the cool down. It was like 45 minutes. It was short, 30. I said, good for you, because the 44 minutes you got done this morning is 44 minutes more than the likelihood of what you have got done this afternoon or this evening, right? Because you ain't gonna get it done. And so, again, like, it's not just about what we do for ourselves physically, but it's what we're teaching ourselves to be able to do and to problem solve and to figure things out and to be more resilient for what's going to happen on race day, right? It's just to troubleshoot and figure it out. You know, it's the duct tape mentality. You know, it's like, I just, do a little duct tape and figure it out and be all fixed and here we go. Instead of, always looking for a reason for things to be broke or not working or I can't do this. It's about finding a way. And then it's about being able to find, when you find a way, it's like, have fun with it if it's something different. Like it's like you can lose yourself in these things and still get this benefit without staring at a screen and having to hit perfect watts and making sure your graph is perfect in Training Peaks when you're in the right zone. Like, there's just I fear as a coach, like, honestly, that things for a lot of athletes, because of the amount of information that's readily available, again, like, information doesn't mean actionable feedback. And I think that's a very important thing for athletes to hear. Like, there's never been more information to gather when you swim and you bike and you run, or when you sleep, right? Your HRV, your resting heart rate, like all these things. Like, there's never been more information to gather. But it doesn't always mean it's you're getting enough actionable information to have an appropriate feedback. And so what happens is a lot of people get their decision making becomes clouded and their judgment becomes clouded, and what they think that they're benefiting from gets clouded because there's so much noise. There is no clarity. And I think it's just a really interesting, honestly, like, it's not a dynamic, but a problem really with how many things there are to get lost in, that a lot of people have no direction. And how we get so in the weeds with small minor details, and because here's the thing is that most athletes in these spend so much energy, right? Either mental or physical energy in the weeds with these small details that they don't have enough energy left over to just do the basics. It's like, there's that phrase, like, carry water, chop wood. It's just that hardworking, simple mentality. It's all you need. And so you have that type of athlete who just gets the work done no matter what, and the work is the work. And then you got the other athlete who's sitting in the shed sharpening the axe for hours and hours and hours and hours, to the point to where he chops little to no wood. Or, as with all things, when you over sharpen something, what happens? It either becomes dull or becomes so brittle when you use it, it breaks. And, or the person who spends 14 hours making a list only to get one thing accomplished because they spent most of their day making a list, not completing a list. And that's I think the trouble that we find ourselves in with so much is that, some people take like 20 minutes just to get going on a bike workout. You got to sync them. They got more wires than ATT, building. It's unbelievable. And again, you're adding more potential for problems and complication. Right. And so when you strip away some of those things and you just realize that the work is the work, and It doesn't have to be, downloaded perfectly. I don't have to be able to see everything for it to count. It's like we get so altered, I think, in our state of what we need to feel like we did the work today, and then also feeling like we have to analyze it. And like I've just from being this person, like I don't analyze any work that I ever do immediately afterwards. So at the end of the week, I come back and look at it, but I'm not that person. I'm going to go back, or man, that was horrific. If it was horrific, you know what? I knew it was horrific way before I got finished because I probably felt horrific. And if I felt horrific, I just had a bad day, right? Or if I, felt awesome, I knew before the results were posted on my Training Peaks and to my Garmin Connect, I already knew today was awesome. I knew today was awesome by the 20-minute mark of my 60-minute run. You want to know why? Because I felt awesome. Like I don't need the numbers to tell me the story. Yes, it's nice to have a little bit of additional, numbers to look back on what feeling great looks like or what feeling bad looks like from a numbers perspective. But I already know the answer well before I kind of peek behind the curtain. Like there is no surprise here. And I think a lot of times like we hold on to this like feeling or expectation of what the numbers are going to say. Or you could go out and feel incredible, and then you look at your device and you're like, I felt so great, but I feel like I was at least 50 watts higher. And you're like, okay, well, you weren't, but you felt good today. So either things are out of sync or something like looking, or the highest likelihood being your parameter just wasn't calibrated, because the same, like these devices aren't perfect. Right. And so I think like hell, we ran the 50K, me, Jeremy, Ellie, and Paul, we all ran it together. Same step for step, obviously a little bit different. We are in the same thing. And I think there was like a mile difference in the watches between mine and Jeremy's, and Ellie and Paul's came in the middle. These are all Garmin watches. You pay a couple $100. Like everybody thinks that they're, the fortune tellers, and they're pulling out the same GPS and the same satellite, and they're all different. So we all had different times, we all had different paces, and we were all together. And so it goes to show you, like, there's just like there's always variance. Like you go outside and you do work, you're inside and you work, and it's work. And I know that sounds like way oversimplified, but it's true. Like you accumulate that amount of stress, you accumulate that amount of work, and it benefits all things. And I think we overcomplicate things with this, that we try to be over precise with things. And I think that to me, it's very similar to the reason most people, and the reason I don't, because I've tried, don't like to track their food. Right? They don't like to track their macros. They don't like scanning every fucking food label. They don't like having to type things in. They don't like it taking an extra 3 to 4 to 5 minutes just to prepare a meal or to log it and then look at it and then do a snack. And like, it's mentally exhausting. You're putting so much, and that's why people quit. They're like, I can't do this. I would love to see like the average usage of someone who gets like a food subscription, like a food log, right, with their macros. I'm sure some people are great at it. I get that. But I bet you most people, it's done. I bet you it is just absolutely like done. There's like, I can't, they like, this is too much for me. This is too much. And it's the same way I think with training. It's like, you have so many things you're trying to keep up with. And it's funny because I think, I would say 90% of the athletes I work with, like they're tracking this and they're tracking that and they're tracking this. And I'm probably looking at all the things they don't even look at. Mm-hmm. And, and like, to me, it's like, hey, well, do you need more input? Do you need more, data? I'm like, yeah, I need you to comment more. I want you to tell me how you felt. And instead of saying tired, period, I need some fucking context. Why were you tired? What was tired? What led you to be tired? Like, it's like you got to have, today felt, I got tired towards the end. Okay, like, did it feel aerobically challenging? Did it feel muscularly challenging? Like, what was the, where did we feel this? It's never, hey, yeah, I wish you could really sync up that whoop for me, and that would give me all the answers that I need. I just need you to like use your words. Again, when I tell Hayden, just use your words, man. What you want to say. And it's like you can be so overly precise with things. I think you really end up making more mistakes along the way, and honestly, probably just losing sight of the big picture.
You just said it right there to me. It's this like the obsession with what's going in, every little detail. There's so many things going on in this world, man. It's like sometimes I could eat, like crap for a week and feel amazing, and the other times I'm trying to eat like I know that these are long-term things, right? So it's like we're so used to kind of seeking a quick fix or cure or whatever it may be, or like a solution that's going to really pop us over the top. But the reality is, man, it's sort of this overanalyzation. It should just, we talk about it all the time. It's sort of when people are like, yeah, nothing special, just kind of average. That sort of is the sweet spot, because, some workouts feel, freaking amazing, right? And we're like, that's it. What did I do? What did I do before this? Because that's what I want to feel like all the time. And it's just sort of that high that has to come back and have a low or whatever. And I am, endlessly fascinated by the stories that I see that where someone felt like shit when they got into it and they figured it out and they got through it. And then it was okay. It's sort of, to me, that's a microcosm of racing and all that sort of thing. And those are the ones that I feel amazed by too, because sometimes when you look back at the data, quote unquote, it isn't even that far off from maybe when you felt great, so there's these weird little idiosyncrasies that go on in our minds that tell us, I was on fire today. And well, it wasn't, that much different really in reality than when you weren't on fire. So it's just a weird thing like that. And, I can't imagine food logging and, sleep log. It's just up and down the block. I mean, I think those things make sense. It's just that over the long haul, it's just really kind of about being sort of in the middle with all this stuff, rather than just being completely on fire all the time. I don't know if we can hit those places. I was watching, I saw a little video from Rick Pitino, who people may love or hate or whatever, but that St. John's was losing bad at halftime. And I'm kind of fascinated too by the halftime speeches that we never see. You always wonder what happens in the locker room at halftime. Did they go off on him? Well, he went off on his team. He said, but it was interesting because he said, look, you guys are just moping around, things aren't going your way, and you just go back and, I don't care if you miss shots. That's going to happen. But when you go back down and your heads are down and you're moping around like you're a little baby that, didn't get what he wanted, that's the shit I noticed. You got to figure out how to get up and play defense, because if things aren't going your way on offense, how are you going to play defense? And I think that there's some analogy there for, yeah, maybe I don't have everything today, but how can I grind it out and figure out how to make it work? Because that's all you got. If you don't have what you like to have all the time and things aren't going perfectly, how do you react? And that's sort of that adversity. And I'm fascinated by the idea that actually, whatever his speech was seemed to work. You know what I mean? They were the same people. They didn't eat anything different or have a nap or get more rest or anything. They just came out in the second half and turned it on mentally, and they ended up winning the game. So how do we do that?
Yeah.
That's what I want to know.
No, it's perfect. Like, that's exactly what I was watching the Tennessee Vandy basketball game. They were down like 16. I mean, it played horrific in the first half.
Mm-hmm.
Horrific. Our best player is Kai Ziegler, who's like just an amazing defensive player. And after the game, they came back and won. He had like 23 all in the second half. And he was like, what was the halftime speech like? What'd they say? Was it like, rah, rah? Was he yelling at team? And he said, no, I kept it pretty simple. He said, every year and every game this time of year, you got two choices. You can either wilt or you can grow.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
And he was like, so we decided to grow. And I think it's just like it's just like an overly simplified, like thing you think through, and you're like, wait, really? Yeah, I guess it is that simple. Like, I can either wilt to the conditions or the lack of availability to quote unquote train at my, my preferred environment, so I can't do that. I'll just wilt, or I can grow and figure it out.
Well, that game's not over, right? That's the thing.
Exactly. Right.
And that's the analogy for me is that, you're at mile 6 of the run or 7 of the run or 8 of the run. The game's not over. There's still a way, in training, same thing, you coming out of the gate, it's not quite there. It's not done yet. Don't like you said, don't judge a day by, coffee spilled in the morning.
I had a funny story. We can end it on this one, but I had a very similar experience. Like, I was having a rough morning this morning. I'm in the shower, took a shower after the workout, and I'm drying off, and I mean, totally dried off. And I went to just dry off my leg one more time, and my elbow knocked the nozzle and turned the shower right back on. It just fucking drenched me. And for like a split second, I got irritated, and I just started laughing. I was like, "Yep, that tracks. That feels just about right." But it wasn't one of those like, threw the towel across the room and had like this, huge response. I almost did.
If you can laugh in the face of it, that's some beauty, man.
Laugh in the face.
I was snow blowing yesterday, dude. It was so windy. It didn't matter which way I was going. I was just covered in snow, and I just had to laugh because it was so cold out. It was, 10 below, and the wind was blowing, and I'm trying to blow, I've got tire tracks on there, so I'm trying to dig that shit up, and there's like ice crunching in there, and this everywhere I put that snow blower thing, it was just blowing right back in my face, and it was just so funny. And I kind of got through it, but it's just like, this is ridiculous, man. If we can laugh in the face of ourselves, there's nothing more powerful. And I think a lot of times that's what I tell athletes to do, laugh at the ridiculousness of what's going on at the back half of an Ironman. It's just silly, but
it is. I mean, it really is. If you think about it, it's like, what the fuck are we doing out here? Right? It's like, this is just
laugh at the absurdity, man. And that's really kind of a good angle on life, because if you can laugh, and I had a really good friend who was really good at laughing in the face of disaster all the time. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I can see this event 5 years from now, it's going to be funny. He was really good at that somehow.
Yeah.
But yeah, laugh at it, man.
Laugh at it and grow from it, and make it happen. Again, it's time of year, regardless of time of year. Laugh at it, make it happen, get it done, and it'll always, I think, kind of lower that bar of what you think is easy, and what you think is and raise the bar of, and that's the ultimate goal, right? Lower things, they always feel easier, and the harder things, what it takes for something to feel hard always gets harder. So yeah, you can either wilt or you can grow. And as always, we love you guys. We appreciate you. Go to our website at c26triathlon.com. It is our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you need anything from Mike, he's available. Mike at c26triathlon.com. If you need anything from me, I am at Robbie at c26triathlon.com.
All right, man.
Hey, man. I'm going to go walk outside naked in the snow.
Attaboy.
Yep. Definitely will.
Enjoy it.
See you, dude.
See you.